What's going on, guys? Devin here with Backcountry Exposure. So lately I've been thinking a lot about what actually happens when you put a double wall titanium mug on your stove, like the one that I have here with me today, because it's going to be an experiment day. I've been so curious about this because I've read in places, and I've even mentioned in videos as I've put out reviews or talked about cookware, that you don't cook with double wall mugs, that they are a glorified lightweight item to just hold liquid, which is still what I believe. But I decided with this 300 milliliter mug that I don't really ever use it, and I just decided that I'm going to do an experiment and see what happens when you do put your double wall mug on your stove. I have never seen any videos on this before, and I've never really read anything about like what actually happens when you do put a double wall mug on your stove. But we're gonna check it out today. I'm gonna light this thing up, I'm gonna stick it on there, and we're gonna see what happens. Okay, so the stove that I've got today is the Olicamp Kinetic. I'm gonna go ahead and light this thing up. All right, now that we've got it lit up, I'm gonna go ahead and stick the double wall mug on there. Oh man. Okay, so I'll let you know as well that the current time is 3:45 exactly. Something I want to point out for consideration here is the fact that this is like 250 milliliters of water, so it's not a lot of water that's in here. We've already been going for 4 minutes, and I'm not seeing any kind of boiling happening yet. So one of the things that I'm noticing as I'm just paying attention to this is, look at how the bottom of the pot is like pushing down, so it's not flat like it has been when I first put it on, but it's actually starting to like sink down, and I wonder if there's just like weird negative pressure that's happening. But we've been going for 6 minutes now, which, considering how little water is in this, it's now starting to boil. Now we're at a full rolling boil. 6 minutes is a long time for probably about a cup of water is all that's in here. You can see like how hot that is. It's pretty wild. Okay, so here's the deal. The water is evaporating very, very quickly out of this, and I have been boiling for 25 minutes now, or I should say that it's been on the stove for 25 minutes, and I'm going to take it off because not much has changed in the last 10 minutes, and I don't expect much to change. So what I'm going to do, just to give a comparison, which this is very non-scientific, but I've got my 500 milliliter mug that I'm going to stick on that is a single wall mug, and we're going to see how quickly that boils in comparison to about the 250-ish milliliters of water that was in this mug. We're now approaching about 26 minutes of boil time on this particular mug, and I'm curious to see what happens as the mug cools down, if there's any kind of change in the metal, if it warps or anything like that. So while this cools down, we're going to see how quickly the single wall boils in comparison to it. So I'm going to take this off. We're going to stick the 500 milliliter on there, and we're going to time this to see how long it goes. So right now, 4:10 is the time. Okay, so we have been on the stove for about 1 minute and 30 seconds, and this thing is getting really, really close to a boil. So just to compare real quick, the double wall mug took 6 minutes to boil. Okay, 1 minute and 45 seconds-ish for this to get to a rolling boil. That is crazy. All right, so here's the verdict after 25, 26 minutes-ish of total time of the double wall mug on the stove, which again, I use the Olicamp Kinetic titanium stove. This thing is actually really cool. Just watching it for that amount of time, this thing really pumps out a lot of heat, so that's impressive for sure. But let's talk about my findings with the double wall mug. First thing to note is the amount of warping that has taken place on the bottom of the mug. It does not sit flat on the ground anymore. It has totally like curved over on the bottom, so you can definitely see that that is an issue. But what I kind of expected to happen with this is that the inner piece would like pop up or something like that because of the pressure that is in there, but it wasn't as like dangerous as I thought it was going to be. But I think one of the biggest things to note about it was the fact that with so little water in here, like maybe a cup at most, there was like 250 milliliters of water in here, and it took 6 minutes for that to boil. And this thing was cranked up. Like, this thing puts out a lot of BTUs, over 9,000 BTUs, and it took 6 minutes for this to boil. So first thing that I am seeing from it is it just doesn't make sense to try to cook with a double wall mug because it just kills the amount of fuel that you would need to use to be able to get a boil out of it, compared to the 500 milliliter, which had about 450 milliliters of water in it total, and it took less than 2 minutes for this to boil. Now keep in mind that it's about 80 degrees out here today, and the water was a little bit warmer, but still, like, less than 2 minutes. That is insane. So I know this isn't like totally scientific, but it just doesn't make sense to me to try to cook with one of these because of what does happen to the mug. Like, it's totally warped. It's kind of destroyed in my opinion, but it didn't blow up. And I've heard or read things about using a double wall mug or trying to cook with it that it will like explode on you because of the pressure and the way that it's built, but that wasn't my experience. But I definitely don't recommend trying to cook with a double wall mug. Use it to keep your cold and your hot drinks hot. That way you can enjoy it for what it is and really take advantage of the lightweight aspect of it. But cooking with it, it's a bad idea. It's just gonna waste fuel. But for my test specifically, this did not blow up. You can definitely see that. The seal around the top here with the rolled edge appears to be fully intact. There's no like real problems with it. The main issue being here on the bottom with how warped that is. See if you can get a better idea of how bad that looks. And you can just see like the crazy amount of discoloration that took place on that. So if you try to cook on this a lot, you're probably going to experience a pretty bad situation with the pot in general. So definitely not recommended to cook with a double wall mug. Not quite the findings that I expected to see from doing this experiment or this test, but either way, glad to see that things don't explode and blow up like I have heard would take place. But these things are cool either way. Keep your drinks cold or hot. Just don't cook with it because it'll waste fuel and it just doesn't work as well. Took 6 minutes again to boil like less than a cup of water. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hope you have an awesome day.